because of their interests that they have, which, by the way, are not always lined up with interests that small sites and small sponsors have. So, what
Sure.
always good to get Robert on. And you, Brad, you haven't really talked to Robert that much, right? Or have you guys?
Not a whole lot.
No, not a whole lot. No, I
Man, I
met
feel like
Brad
I'm a
at.
matchmaker here.
Yeah, no, I met Brad at SOS, which was cool, and
Okay.
yeah, so.
It's gonna be like virtual Tinder. Swipe right if you don't like.
Right.
Yeah,
I
I
like
think we
that.
have a lot in common though. Like Robert, what I think the main thing that sponsors and sites kind of share is not getting the attention of the industry, maybe. Um, Specifically when it comes to like some of the bigger entities and, of course, the CROs. But what is your take on all this? Like CROs buying sites, how does that impact small sponsors? No one talks about that.
Like like I mentioned, there's looking at Icon's results and what their CEO said that they attribute their success to the last quarter. And, one of the first quotes was to his site networks. So, I mean, sponsors and CROs always have a misalignment in incentives, in my opinion. Um, and, the more and more people I speak to, I think it becomes more and more apparent that, the small biotech, privately funded, couple assets in the pipeline, maybe they have one or two trials going, they kind of get looked over. You know, kind of that type of feeling a small startup new site may get when they're trying to win studies. I would parallel that with the way that we feel when we outsource our work to CROs and it's our baby and it's all we have. And if that study should fail, the company fails. So I'm in a very high risk, high reward space. Um, we're very scrutinized as compared to maybe the big guy. We're always concerned with compliance. We're always concerned with oversight. We're always concerned with all the 1571 obligations that you guys may
Ah,
not have seen, right? Because you guys were
never
used to the
filled out one
15.
of these.
Yeah, exactly, the 1572. So the 1571 is just, a very it's the same type of document, but it's essentially transfer of obligation and responsibility. Obviously, it's called a Toro, right? So we have a Toro, but it's the same thing as a delegation log, right? You can delegate responsibility, or I'm sorry, authority, but responsibility still lies with the PI. So similarly with the 1571, it just highlights what our CRO is, what tasks we have assigned them, and they are taking on, that we have transferred to them. And it just mirrors essentially an RFP, a request for proposal, and the assumptions checklist, and it highlights all that kind of stuff. But the 1571 is there, and nonetheless, I think to circle back to the comment here is that we do feel similarities between smaller sites, even sites in general. Forget small, can be as large as Brad's network.
But I
But
think
at
Brad's still
times,
considered small, no? Like
I'd
yours.
say, I would think in the grand scheme,
Mm.
still consider myself a baby.
The big
Not
would
okay.
be like USC, Dana Farber, like those
Well, I mean,
UCSF.
even networks, right, Dan? I'm talking
Ah, the
like,
networks.
even larger networks because they have pull. They do
Hmm.
have pull. So I think, if you just look at their why were they so successful? I think it's weird personally. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I think that, it's just like when the IRBs were gobbling up sites, with PE and VC coming in and buying sites, and it's like, all right, so I'm gonna outsource everything to you, and we're gonna use your sites that you own, that you manage, that you oversee, that you employ, and you're gonna produce this data that I'm gonna use for my NDA application, potentially an IND, even to get into the clinic. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's too soon to tell. I have not personally had that experience, and I'm not sure I would go down that pathway. But when the big guys do it, and when I say the big guys, you know what I mean. It's kind of like whatever starts at the top of the funnel and trickles through like a coffee maker, right? The water goes in the grinds and everything goes through there, and then you get the coffee in the pot. Well, that seems to be all right. Well, I'm gonna drink it. There could be some stuff left over in that filter. So I mean, I use that analogy to change and things in the space. A whole bunch of great ideas are way up here at the top. And the sponsors are expected to police themselves. Large pharma are expected to police themselves. Wait a minute, no, we're not. The CROs are going to do it. No, we're not. The sponsors are going to do it. No, we're not. The sites are going to do it. And then whatever trickles to the bottom, it's like just like when EDC was implemented 15 years ago, right? From when you moved over from triplicate CRFs, carbon copies, over to EDC. Everybody waited and had big eyes on big pharma, and regulators didn't ding them, and it got adopted to a degree, right? So that's where we are today. And small biotech, just like with small sites, we're all a little risk averse. You want to do the best you possibly can.
Question is on the
yeah.
coffee analogy. LinkedIn user, reveal thyself. How strong do you want your coffee, espresso or watered down yesterday's grounds?
Man, when I was in college, I used to double brew my coffee. I would let it come through and then pour it back in instead of the. Oh yeah,
Man,
so I don't know. That's a tough one to answer.
Brad, what were you gonna say about this?
Well, I mean, a few things. I mean, first of all, to go back to like the CROs buying up sites, yeah, we see what like the CEO says. I haven't seen the numbers, but I've had a lot of people message me on the back end and talk about how much of a mess it is at some of these CRO bot site networks, and that a lot of it doesn't seem sustainable for these, because CROs don't know how to run sites really. And then this is what I'm hearing in the background. So I'm curious to see how the next like year, 18 months play out, because it's easy color me skeptical, but I don't trust every word that comes out of a CEO's mouth of a multi-billion-dollar company that hey, everything's great and our sites are amazing.
A lot of these CEOs of these publicly traded companies don't even own like actual stock. They're paid based on the next couple quarters progress, so they're not long-term. Dr. Fox, shout out to you, man. You've been in the vlog. You're in that vlog like so much. Everybody go see that vlog. That vlog just dropped, guys. It's hot. Spot yourself if you're not tagged, and you'll get something. I don't know what we'll send you, but we'll get something.
But I will say, like, I love, there's like a double-edged sword that probably applies to both working with small sites and with smaller sponsors, biotech. But I have found like some of our most successful trials have been with companies with one product that are startups, because they are willing, I think, I know you say there's risk aversion, but I also think they're willing to try things and listen to sites, especially the sites where things are working, because they're willing to put people at the site, see what's going on, help out. I think you get a lot more. Again, it's double-edged, because some sites don't like that shit, and you can't, it doesn't happen. But then if you're open, as a small site, and you're willing to take a little bit of a chance, like, you can accomplish so much more together, because it does feel like a partnership, because so much more is on the line, I think, for both. Like, just like you said, it's high risk, high reward. I feel like it's probably less reward or less risk maybe for small sites, but it's still the same kind of game, right? Like, it's fairly high risk, high reward for us too. So, I mean, yeah, aside from the things that you would imagine, like, some small biotechs don't have like good payment systems set up, so we're waiting for money for a long time, but we get it eventually. And like, we're a small site, so maybe they're waiting on our data a little longer than they'd like to, but ultimately, we've oftentimes crushed enrollment over big sites and site networks when we partner with these small sponsors in biotech. So I feel like that's really kind of underappreciated and undervalued.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
They're more willing to experiment with new strategies, because they have no real other core competency. Like, they've never done this, so they're open to anything, and they don't have like the sacred cows,
Yeah, I mean, Dan, listen, when we kicked off our phase 3, I mean, we had at least 12, if not more, CRC roundtables. Whether or not people wanted to join or not, we at least had a forum for sites to jump on, talk with one another. PI roundtables. I myself came to your site, if you remember, Dan, right?
How could I forget?
Yep. And your site wasn't the only one I went to. So, I think Brad's absolutely correct. That partnership, you kind of, it resonates as a true partnership much deeper than, one of the larger players in the industry where you're just kind of, well, you're a site, you're replaceable, show up or don't, and if you don't, see you later. So, and you're right. I mean, there's a lot of things we totally listen. I mean, we went through at least 2 amendments that I can think of that were a direct result of site feedback. Logistical amendments, sometimes it was a protocol administrative change letter that was acknowledged by the IRB. But you're right. We do hear the sites loud and clear, and much more willing to implement things that make their lives and their experiences much better.
I think it's a weird way you're forced to, right? Because again, if you're not the big guy and you're like, hey, who cares? There's 100 sites lined up that we can just go pick off if we don't like you. Then, if you have to pay attention to the sites you have, then, because you're working within a boundary. I mean, I feel like it's like hiring an inexperienced coordinator, right? Like there's some growing pains, but you don't have a lot of the inbred sort of bad habits that a big sponsor has. Just like you said, like you feel like they don't really give a shit about you. You're just another site, right? Do I have all your documents or not? That's all I care about.
Yep. No, right on the money. Right on the money. Let's call it like it is. This is the truth here. This is uncandid. I mean, this is it. This is what you don't hear.
You know what? I've had good experiences with small, and some of my best experience have been with the big sponsors. I got to give Eli Lilly a shout out. Like, I don't know if it's a particular department that we're working with, but they're killing it, man. They got payment system like almost in real time, Robert. We'll do a visit. We'll do like a week of visits, and then the next 2 weeks you're getting like the remittance email, and then a week later you get the direct deposit. It's like almost in real time. You don't need to chase people down. The CRO is not involved at all in the payment. They're using one of the big CROs. But I've also had the opposite occur where Dr. Fox has been very vocal about not getting paid, and that's from both small and large. Let me ask you, Robert, put you on the spot here. If you had to design a study like all over again, let's say a phase 3, would you go with another big CRO or would you go with a small CRO or no CRO? Do you think the tech is there to not do CRO, but to like just have consultants do various roles that a CRO would?
Yeah, if I had my way and I had the operational budget, I would absolutely not use a CRO in any way, shape, or form.
You'd go straight sponsor monitoring and everything.
I would insource every functional area I possibly could, and if I couldn't insource that area, then I would outsource it. Maybe data management, maybe biostats, but yeah, I would honestly bring in-house everything that I possibly could.
Okay, next question though. Do you think the CROs know this, that you're not the only one that feels this way as a sponsor? And that's why the CROs are scrambling, hey, let's buy sites, let's buy tech.
Absolutely.
What you just said is like, okay, if Robert wants to like insource a lot of this stuff, why don't we have that tech? Why don't we have these sites?
Dan, I mean, yes, that is my assumption. It's a hypothesis. It's merely my opinion. It doesn't, hold much water. Everybody can, read between the lines and see how they see it.
The market will tell us.
The market, but I think the CROs have acknowledged this. They maybe not have come out and said it, but I mean, do we see the downsizing for any other reason than what we just said? You're seeing the ambition of small biotech, mid-sized biotech, and pharma. They're insourcing more and more of these activities as a result of the outputs that some of the CROs are providing. Just to the top of the show, like Brad mentioned, I mean, we're not getting the deliverable. Like, Dan, last night, our Guru Nation After
went to
Dark
midnight. Guru Nation After Dark. Subscribe to the OnlyFans later.
I see you made me laugh and now I forgot my train of thought.
Listen, I got some questions, but I think this is Fox. Robert, when do you think is the best time to include sites in the conversation? After funding approval, before protocol? Where's the sweet spot?
That's a tough question. Because I don't want to provide a lip service answer. Like I mean, everybody I think would imagine what we would want to hear. The sooner the better, right? From the ground up. But logistically, that's not always possible. So I will tell you, I did have an experience within the past year and a half where we were talking with some CROs, and during the RFP process, one of the CROs actually brought on one of their representatives from several of their sites that worked in this therapeutic area. And they gave us their input on the protocol, kind of to justify, to say that, hey, our assumptions are a little off, and this is their experience, and here's the site's input. So, for me, I think the sweet spot is, when you're looking for your CRO partner, if that's the model you're going for, because at that time, I mean, you typically have IRB approval, you may or may not, maybe the protocol's in draft. Bringing the site and those different stakeholders to the table as soon as possible, I think, is critical. And I'm a big proponent of bringing on sites also, not just for protocol development, but the tech integration, the UAT environments. Like, I would love to have Brad, Dan, you guys are sites. Great. Here, play around with this environment. What do your coordinators think? Do they think it's easy? What do they think the patients are going to think about it?
We got to
You
talk to
know?
those tech vendors, make us advisors, give
Yeah.
us a little something. And
But Dan, we talked
we'll
about
mess with it.
UAT. We talked about UAT
The
before.
sandbox, you taught
The
me about
sandbox.
that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think sites need that opportunity as well.
Yeah, that's
Hey,
one thing that pisses me off. I think it's ridiculous, especially when it's like a CRO owned tech, like that they don't at SIV, instead of reading slides. I'm gonna get heated now. Instead of reading slides,
Get it?
they should have us actually use, like, hey, CRC, log in, pretend I'm a patient, like, let's get my diary, generate my diaries, generate my ePro. Because at screening and baseline, what's the biggest, like 90% of the time, the biggest like barrier to having a smooth first rando or first screening, usually it's rando, is getting that damn thing to work. Like, something, you gotta click something, somebody's gotta do something, you didn't check this box. Why not get that over with at SIV instead of reading like all these slides?
We don't even have that shit on site half the time during SIV. We're
There you
waiting,
go.
2 weeks for activation because somebody didn't fill out a form correctly or it went to the wrong address. The logistics that are behind it too are just still not not good, man. But you're right. Like, stop reading words off the slide. Like, we can do that.
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Genius solution, but I don't know why they don't do that. Like, maybe, like you said, they're not ready.
I wonder if
Yeah,
they've done it. Have they done it? Like, has anyone done it
Oh.
to even know? Like,
Well, I do UAT all the time, Brad. I mean, I'm doing UAT. I mean, I literally have a Word document with every user credential. Like, I want to log in as a CRC. I want to log in as a PI. I want to log in as a sub-I. I want to log in as a read-only. Why? I mean, this is what boggles my mind. I mean, tech vendors, let's go. What's going on here? I mean, drop something in the comments. I don't understand why we're not bringing sites to the table during UAT.
I noticed it's when the CRO owns the tech that it's sloppier.
Well, it's sloppier in design and execution for sure, but I think, an apple's an apple, Dan. I mean, it's going to trickle down. The point here that I'm trying to make is, back to Dr. Fox's question, was, when is the best time to bring the site to the table? I say we bring the site to the table as soon as possible for any part of the development process. And I'm not talking just operational, I'm talking developing the clinical program itself. I have a core set of sites that are very close, near and dear to me that I will continue to use. And I plan on bringing those stakeholders to the table as we continue clinical development. Because again, I always, like, Dan, this isn't lip service. I said it last night. I believe, and I put myself in that patient's journey when I'm developing a protocol. What's it going to be like for that patient? What's it going to be like for that site? What's it going to be like for that coordinator? If everything is copacetic as it can be, retention, recruitment, enrollment, everything is going to just symbiote. It's just going to be like, I don't want to say sunshine and rainbows, but it's going to energize the people involved, and things will just kind of materialize on their own, as opposed to, hey, Brad, you guys haven't screened enough. Hey, Dan, your screen failure rate's too high. Hey, guys, what's the problem here? Where's the barrier?
Hey,
Where's
log
the
into this
roadblock?
portal and update these queries.
Yeah, I mean, you're tired of hearing that. You're tired of it. But if your coordinators are like, yo, this study is just such a pleasure to work for. It's, and it may not be the easiest study, but the tools are there. The voice is heard. So many times people feel like, my voice is falling on deaf ears. And it's very discouraging. It's frustrating. So I
Patients actually
empathize.
considered.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's super underappreciated that sites, busy sites that have a lot of studies and are pressed for time and employees, like they're going to work on the studies that they like and that are a joy to work on. Maybe not a joy, to your point, like maybe not everything's perfect, but even if it's not, and I'm getting some true like human contact with the CRO or a sponsor or whoever it may be, like I'm much more motivated to work on that study.
Okay, that's a
and
segue. We're gonna get to this question, but I'm gonna put Brad on the hot seat real quick. I put Robert, I'm gonna put Brad, and then maybe we'll do like a speed round to wrap it up. But Brad, maybe this is speed round hot seat. Small sponsor or big sponsor if you have to get a study right now?
I think small. We like it.
Publicly traded or not?
Don't care. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know that.
You ever worry about, hey, they're gonna go out of business and not pay?
It's happened before. It's been
Yeah.
quite some time since it's happened.
Yeah.
So I guess that's possibly a concern.
That's the
but
risk. I used to
yeah.
have a rule like I will only work with publicly traded sponsors, no matter how small, because they have access to funding. I break that rule a few times, like with Robert. I broke the rule with him because I know him, I trust him. At the end of the day, I'm working with him, not really a entity, but I tend to follow that rule for the most part. Although lately I've broken that rule a few times and not gotten burned. So maybe that's changing.
It's
Maybe
been a
that's
minute.
changing.
It's been a minute since I've been burned, and at least
Mhm.
the last few we worked with were actually pretty transparent about their like financials in terms of like raising money, and I found that really refreshing too. Where I was like,
Me too. Yeah.
cool, like you're telling me what's up. I don't need to know like all of your business per se, but at least I can feel like you're going to be able to pay me at the end of the day.
I brought it up to one CNS sponsor we're working with. They're really cool. I mean, it's a relatively lower budget, but they're really cool to work with, and they're willing to do all the stuff that you mentioned earlier. But I mean, gun to your head though, like, is it you still go bit small sponsor?
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. Especially, it depends. To your point, you talked about Eli Lilly is a good big sponsor. Well,
Yeah.
I'm finding some are just a nightmare to work with. Where if I had a choice and I never had to work with some of the biggest sponsors again, I would. To be perfectly honest, I would not
This
work
sounds
with them
like
ever again.
This sounds like Fox. How much due diligence do you do as a site before accepting a trial? I used to get excited, accept all of them. Now I do a good amount of due diligence. Who's the company? How much funding? Can I find anything on them? What's their pipeline like? One of the other things I look at is what's the pipeline like? Okay, it's cool that we're getting this study, but what's like future studies with them? Are you doing similar things as a site or anything else?
I mean, definitely researching everything that we can, any kind of public info, trying to have those conversations, like you said, like what's your pipeline? What have you got? I mean, luckily nowadays there is a lot of stuff out there. You can dig up with a quick Google search, as I think we've all learned by now. Some things people maybe don't want to be seen, but stuff out there. So yeah, you can do a decent amount of due diligence without breaking the bank or killing yourself.
Do you prefer the smaller sponsors that are scientist founders or Wall Street founders?
I mean, I guess you need a little bit of both. I'm not a big fan of the Wall Street bros per se, but
Yeah.
Also, yeah, you need somebody who knows how to do business.
Okay. Good. You've passed the hot seat well. Robert, AI tech may replace CRO service. I mean, they're replacing some site services.
Yeah, I mean, I just read an article. I can't remember which company it was, and they had a name for this AI, but it was introduced as, "Hello, I am your AI site monitor."
Wow.
Which sites are using to monitor the EDC and some of the e-source. I mean, is this going to happen, imminently? No. I think it's, it's too soon to tell. I think AI is such a buzzword like DCT was during COVID. I mean, it's
AI's
such
the new buzz. AI's the new DCT.
to me that's the way that I see it. I mean, it remains to be
Uh,
seen, how regulators are going to view it, how it's going to comply with, privacy regulation and storage. And I mean, it's all great in theory. I love the idea, but I think everybody's getting quite uptight, if you will, about AI and all the different implementations. I think there's a ton of brilliant people in the space that are coming up with amazing
mhm.
solutions. But listen, just because you have a good idea doesn't mean it's going to be adopted. A lot of great ideas that should have been mainstream just don't resonate, and they don't go home. So
Do you
I
think
I don't
something
know.
like there's a line between being innovative, to Brad's point, and your point about small sponsors are willing to try more innovative things? Do you think there's a line between being show ready and being innovative? Because no one tells you, hey, we're now like ready for a trial. They just say we have a good tech. They always need someone to try it out
But
first.
Dan, that's how it is for us too when we adopt solutions. Like we piloted a data analytics solution that was kind of a surveillance tool for clinical operations to monitor CRO oversight in a sense, and it was AI powered.
I know which one
Um,
this is, I think.
you absolutely do. You absolutely
Yeah.
do. So I mean, it's difficult because if it works, you're a hero, but if it doesn't, oh man, what a waste of resources that was. And you're kind of,
Yeah.
frowned upon. So too soon to tell for me. Too soon to tell. I mean, we want to be innovative. We want to empower. We want to do all these, great things that we say we want to do. But at the end of the day, if the regulators find fault with something that you have chosen to do because you wanted to be first to do it, that's the problem. Typically, again, going back to that risk aversion, um,
Mm.
if we see one of the big guys do it and it's been successful, and even if it's a spin-off of what they did, we're more willing to maybe go down that road. But I
Yeah.
think, right now with AI and everything,
One of the
it's tough.
things Brad does well, we talked about it in our pod, is he tinkers a lot. That's like in his nature to tinker with things. And it's something that I've tried to implement at Yuma Clinical Trials. And
Mhm.
honestly, like it's kind of cool. It's kind of fun to like try new things, especially now that we're more visible. Like we get offered these things first. And some of them I'm like, nah, you know what? That's like, I just think in my gut it's not going to work. I'm not going to do it. Or like red flags will go up about some of the people or some of the ideas. But some of them you're like, yeah, this is cool. And like, even if it fails, I think I've calculated the risk. How do you assess that, Brad? You tinker with way more stuff than I do.
Yeah, and it's hard. I was having a conversation about this the other day with one of my employees because I, in some ways, it's hard because like I have to drag my employees along for the ride
Yes.
sometimes. Like, all right, we're doing this new thing, guys. Sorry, maybe we're only going to do it for 3 months, and we'll switch
Are
to
they
something
allowed to
else.
tell you
But
no? Or is it dictator?
yeah, I mean, I try to take their obviously take their considerations into account. But I feel like for me, it's about like putting my skin in the game and like putting my money where my mouth is because we want things to get better as sites, and we want sites to be involved, which means we have to take a little bit of calculated risk too in trying some of these things. And I mean, Dan, you're right. I'm 99 out of 100 are nothing. Nothing comes of them, or
Mm.
at least not immediately. Maybe it helps create an iteration down the road though that does get us, help move that needle a little bit.
Have you
But
had any blow up in your face? Like tech that
no,
backfired? No.
nothing that's been like disastrous. And I think you have to, you know, I'm very much for like incremental improvement. Like let's onboard a little bit at a time. We don't have to go crazy deep, and then we're screwed if things backfire. So it is a fine line to walk. So nothing has been disastrous, but I mean, there are things that could have been. I think we've seen examples of that in the industry.
Yeah.
The things that have backfired pretty badly. But again, I think as sites, if we want to be part of the ecosystem and want to be part of the change so bad, we also have to be open to doing some of those things too. So for me,
Brad,
it's like we have to.
question for you: Are you as a site investing in this tinkering, or is it kind of vendors reaching out to you saying, "Hey, will you take a look at this"?
So I've been approached about investing. I've not done it yet with anyone in particular. I have managed to get like some board seats and advisory positions.
No, I'm sorry.
But
I think I maybe didn't say this the right way. What I'm saying is your site, as the owner of your site, are you investing in this tech
gotcha.
purchase it? When, because Dan says you're tinkering a lot.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
these things,
Sometimes,
right?
sometimes yes. Sometimes we are
Okay.
paying. We're paying. We'll be like,
Okay.
look, we'll do a small contract with you guys to see how this works,
Interesting.
and maybe it is a little bit out of pocket. But I mean, ultimately, even then, it's about being better at what we do, running a better business. So if this tool you bring me helps me find 5 more patients a month, and I'm paying $1,000, well, the ROI is
But
clearly
Robert,
there.
a lot of the new stuff, especially the newer, because I get some advisory roles now too. So I pay for Creo, right? I think that's the only thing we pay for. The rest of the stuff that I tinker with are founders who found me through YouTube and say, "Hey, you want to try this out?" Then I usually say, "Yeah, I'm into advisory roles." If I like the founders and the product and all that, I do my own DD. I don't want to waste my employees' time or like get them upset. Like then it backfires.
Sure.
Haven't had that happen. But what to the vendors, what they actually want, like at least at this stage, is not money. They want proof of concept and they want to actually try it in like a real world environment. So
Yeah, I'll
we
say
are
most of
taking
them aren't
risks.
trying to build the crap out of you as a site. To
Yeah.
his point, this one is
Not
see
yet.
does this
Not
one.
yet.
Not yet.
But Dan, like the typical site, I mean, Brad, Dan, your sites are, whatever you want to call them. I mean, I think you're established at this time. I mean, undoubtedly Brad is older than Yuma is, but the point I'm trying to make here is, how do vendors approach a site to say, hey, we have this tech, we have this solution to this problem that could make your life easier in this way. I mean, you guys could hear that as much as I get reached out to from clinicaltrials.gov. I mean, I get dozens of emails a week, cold calling, cold
Yeah.
emails, with some entitlement behind it. So how does a tech vendor reach out to a Brad and a Dan and say, hey, will you take a look at this and let us know? I mean, you would have no other time in your day to conduct your business if you were sitting there tinkering with new tech all day long and providing your feedback. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. And again, this is a conversation I've had with someone's like, why are you wasting so much time talking to all these people? And I mean, it's a fine line. I'll be really honest. Like, if you reach out to me, it literally just depends on the hour in which I read it, in which I might totally ignore it, or I might be intrigued. And I've sat through hundreds, thousands probably of phone calls of these things. And frankly, I can't, I don't know if I can quantify what it is that makes me want to bite, but, I try to go by my own intuition, and what I see. And especially if there are connections with this person that are otherwise trustworthy. But yeah, it can take up a lot of time.
So one question, Brad, Dan, and I want to ask each of you this. So what is the buzzword in the first 60 seconds of an elevator pitch that makes you want to explore or tinker with some type of new tech? Is there something there? Is there a big problem at the site level that you're trying to fix? I'm not talking site payments. I'm not talking CRO. Like what at your site needs better efficiency that you would be like, wow, I really want to hear this and invest
This
the
is
time in
easy,
one of
man.
those.
This is easy. Everything needs better at the site. Everything. There's no vertical that we do that doesn't need improvement. And buzzword is none. If I actually hear buzzwords, I'm turned off. I want to hear like a real honest, like preferably from the founder, like, hey, you know what? Like usually humility works very well, not pitches, not buzzwords. And then that's my style. Like as soon as I get pitched, like, hey, streamline your payments, I'm like, this is bullshit. Like, what do you mean streamline my payments? I call the people paying us directly how much, like, you can't scale that, and it still doesn't work. So how's your tech gonna do that? So it's my bullshit radar goes off fast, but humility works very well, and that's matter of fact, all the people I work. Look at Ethan. This is a perfect example. He approached like with humility, like, "Hey, you know what? We're from Palantir." That what caught me because I like Palantir, and like this is what we're trying to do. We don't know. We don't have it figured out. We need like beta sites to figure like to help us. I don't know what Brad's answer is. He's probably got something more
No,
sophisticated.
no. It's not. It's not that much different. I mean, I think it's just the authenticity where like they're trying. They're if they've identified or at least have an idea of the problem. They're not selling me a product. They're selling me a solution, right? Like,
Right.
and I feel like even if they're not quite right or don't quite have it, if I feel the authenticity in what they're trying to do, then I can feel better about trying to work with them, even if I don't care who they are, you know, whether they've never done anything in the space or whether they're famous on LinkedIn, whatever, you know, and that, you know, not unlike Dan, I think if you start saying fucking synergy or whatever or deal flow, like I'm probably gonna be like,
here's my Calendly. I hate that.
nah, dude, I do
Hey,
that. I do that. So sorry.
Do sites need to start adopting a CTO role to kind of, I mean, think about that, right? I mean, most sites don't have that role. CROs have it, sponsors have it. Do sites need a maybe not a chief technology officer, but do they need some type of tech department to vet all these? Because without feedback from stakeholders like yourselves, how are we going to push the envelope forward?
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. This is something I've thought about. I don't think we're at maybe quite at a size. I mean, I'm the one who pretty much does the tinkering now. But I don't think that's a bad idea as sites begin to grow and scale, because everyone's going to have their unique stack internally and externally, especially for now. And I feel like we're becoming like everything I always hated. Like, I just wanted to use one platform, not make everybody's lives hard. And now I'm already like, well, shit. Now we're using like 6 things internally because we're.
Well, don't worry, they get consolidated. They get,
yeah, but see that, but that's the problem, right? We need standardization in our industry, right? I mean that's the. I was having this conversation yesterday with Gus Paveda. Big shout out to him. You know, and then that's the problem, is that everyone's using, you know, there's 20, I mean, obviously there's the number one, right? Metadata, the big EDC, but there's 25, 30 EDCs. There's all these CTMSs, all these CDMSs. There's all these safety databases, tons of TMS.
You know what though?
We need to standardize this stuff. We
I
really do.
kind of disagree. Like,
Okay.
Here's why. Maybe it's apples to oranges. They standardized aviation. Like airlines, customer service sucks. Planes are crashing, doors are falling off, because once you become the standard, you get lazy, stop innovating, and you spend all your time lobbying to defend your moat. And so you don't have like new innovation. I mean, look at the Boeing Max engines. Like, they put some autopilot thing in there, the pilots weren't even aware of it.
Yeah, but Dan, think about this though. You know, Boeing. I don't want to make this an aviation situation. You know,
Just an example, but that was standardized.
Well, hang on. It's really not though. I have to disagree with you, and let me tell you why. It's funny. Again, this came out of a conversation yesterday. These two, there was this one guy in fintech and another who happened to be in aviation, QA, part of aviation. It was a really amazing think tank discussion. But the point she made was, not every part is manufactured by Boeing. There's actually a form called 8130 that you can trace back. So if they have a bolt that they use in the manufacturing of the plane, that particular bolt that was faulty may or may not have been manufactured by Boeing, but they still use it in their manufacturing process. So you can't hold Boeing 100%. I mean, you can, but do you see what I'm trying to say here? So back to systems and AI and tech and integration, you know, if it's not being able to be traced back to the single source from which it came from, you know, the actual programmer who made this line of code that's the culprit of an issue, parallel that to a specific bolt that was used that flew off, you know, it's not necessarily the creator manufacturer who made that bolt that was used in the production of this product. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of hands in the pot. Even though Boeing is on the face of the name, it doesn't mean that every wire, every bolt, every tie, every screw is manufactured by that company. Not the same to be said for pharmaceuticals, because we have GMP that we have to follow, right? And, can it be outsourced though to other companies? Absolutely. I mean, I
Yeah.
can tell you my company is not manufacturing our API, it's outsourced. So,
Yeah.
I'm just saying food for thought to think about, how do we get more sites involved so their voices are heard when you guys as site owners are pretty busy during your day. And if Brad's the one doing the tinkering with all these new things, even if I'm calling up and saying, "Hey, I'm a tech guy, I have this solution that will make your life a lot easier." He just said it. It depends on the hour, his mood, the time of day, the day, and maybe I just caught him at a bad time and it's like, shit, if I would have got him an hour earlier, he would have adopted this, and we would have had our first sale, for example.
That's why
Or
humility works, man. It's the same as me when I reach out to a sponsor for a study. Like
yeah,
I'm sure you get tons of. I mean, and you've probably been turned off by some messages. Like I
oh,
know you have
that.
because we talked about it. But there's probably some sites that approached you in a way that you're like, hey, you know what? Let me have a
You're
conversation with these guys.
absolutely correct. Absolutely. I mean, there's some sites where literally I feel terrible in the depths of my soul saying no, but not because I want to say no. It's just we don't have anything at the moment.
Yeah. So see, we
So no,
come full
you're
circle.
you're
Small
absolutely right.
sponsors, small sites, basically the same. We're dealing with the same things. So it's just we're getting bombarded by tech vendors wanting us to try their thing. You're getting bombarded by sites like me and Brad trying to get studies. It's hard to do. Look, I get off my game sometimes and just copy and paste you. I
Yeah.
hope the person on the other end doesn't read it, but I've noticed when I try to personalize it, I get better results. Go figure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of work to be done. I think this is a great conversation, but bringing the sites to the table is a critical mission for me personally, and I hope other sponsors feel the same way.
We got a hard stop in 10 minutes, but Lindsay, she says, Brad, I'd love to come visit your site and hear all your thoughts before our studies start this spring with you. I love this conversation and want to be sure to share your thoughts with the internal teams. We need your insights. There you go,
All
Brad.
right, hit
Boom,
me up.
there it is.
I think you're not going to be here tomorrow for SIV, Lindsay. I think, unless I'm wrong. But yeah, it depends on what hour you email me. But shoot me a message.
Wait, who's Lindsay? And like, how come I'm not getting study? Lindsay, let's go. I can do a study. Let's go. Anyone know what's tech? I don't know what. Astrat, shout out to you. You were on last night at midnight,
He was.
and you're on now at the crack of dawn.
And Brad,
What's tech? What is
this
tech?
is a doctoral holder. I believe a doctor of health
Of public
administration.
policy. Yeah, health
Yeah.
administration. Yeah.
And we were talking about, kind of he wanted to know his best way in the door, and I was talking about checking your ego. But my point is, he just took a role as a traveling CRC with Care Access. So we were giving a big shout out to Astrat last night
Yes.
for doing exactly what he needed to do to kind of get his foot in the door. So again,
Respect.
Astrat, big respect to you.
Shout out to Ashley Margot, the MC of SOS. Ethan
Yes.
said, in my opinion, the biggest thing sites can do to bring better tech into the ecosystem is to establish their own experimentation budgets. As a startup, you're in a dead sprint to revenue. So I can't try this unless you can definitely pass the cost on to sponsors. Is a tricky chicken and egg problem. Very hard for, yeah, imagine me,
He's
Rob.
right.
Yeah, what if I say Rob, let's say he gives me a study, right? He gives us a study, Brad. And then we come back to Rob before we screened anyone and said, hey, man, we got this new tech. We want to pass the cost on to you. Thanks, Robert. Here's the bill. Net 15 days. Thank you, man.
Yeah. I mean, look, if I had a printing press and I was working in the Federal Reserve and I could sneak out the money before it got shredded, I would say absolutely. Carte blanche, Shakespeare for everyone. Like back to school, pick a card, credit card. Shakespeare for that's obviously I think to Brad's point that there's a cost of doing business at some juncture to make your staff's lives a little bit easier, more efficient. So can you pad in some of those costs into an overhead budget? Absolutely. Overhead justification. Can you do a billable line item for tech? Sure. So I'm sure you could offset some of it. I'm just not sure about 100% of it.
Yeah, I think that's the ticket. I mean, even if it's depending on what the solution is you're using, like if you can try to tie it to something in a budget, and also to your point, like some of it's just the cost of doing business means that maybe I'm taking a chance, and if it works out for me, then I don't care if I build it through to the sponsor. I still had a
Yeah.
huge ROI, and it's just good for my business, and I become better at what I do. And I don't think sites are often willing enough to take some of those chances.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly,
last
Brad. Exactly.
last
One thing,
6
Dan.
minutes. Oh, go ahead, Robert.
No, I just want to say to Brad's point. I mean, a lot of the sites are, they have this mantra. I'm just gonna pass it through, pass it through, pass it through, and you just this goes back to the SOS panel.
Yeah.
You can't we can't absorb 100% of your cost of doing business. So if Brad's gonna invest $1,000 and it returns 5 patients more a month for him, wow, I mean, it's pretty much worth that $1,000. So you
Yeah.
can't, so yeah, I think more sites need to adopt that mentality that Brad just mentioned. I think, for the betterment of the industry
Yeah,
itself.
and sites complain a lot about, oh, we're not getting this reimbursed. Well, some of like community outreach, I mean, at some point, like you got to do it for the community, for your site. It's like benefiting all your studies, not just one sponsor. So why are you billing? And maybe they do bill all of them, and they get 20 reimbursements for one thing, pass through cost. I got a direct result of sponsors insisting itemizing everything. Yeah, I don't like that item. Okay, hot seat, like speed round, 5 minutes left. Okay, I'm gonna ask you each the same question. So, Robert, remote monitoring visits or in person?
In person.
Brad.
I hate to say it, but I think in person.
Okay. Well, I ran out of hot seat stuff, but that was one. The pressure's on for 5 minutes. I can't.
You were on the hot seat. You were on the hot
I'm on
seat.
the hot seat.
That was your best work yet, right there,
That
buddy.
was my best work right there. I'm trying to think of a controversial one, but we only have 5 minutes. You guys got a good one? E-consent or paper, Robert?
E-consent.
Same.
Okay. E-source or paper source? This was SOS debate.
Depends. I still think it depends on the study, man. We're still, some of our studies that we're taking, we're still like occasionally we're like, you know what, we're keeping this on paper. It doesn't make sense to go through all the work of eSource. And it may depend on a number of different factors, but I'd say mostly eSource with still some paper.
I got a good
agree.
one. I got a good one. CRAs that work for CROs or sponsors?
Oh, that's easy for me. I mean,
Yeah, for
you know
you,
my
it's easy.
answer.
Brad?
I'd love to hear Brad.
I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I can't even tell the damn difference sometimes.
Wow.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's not clear. It's not always that clear to me.
You know why?
I wasn't expecting that.
You know why? It's true though. You can see the range of quality from when you work with like a CRO that with a big sponsor versus the same CRO with a small sponsor. Not always, you get outliers, but you get like on average the quality of CRA that does this FSP thing. I mean, they usually are science background. Not that it's required. They usually have answers when you call them. Like they don't need to ask someone else. It's just anecdotal. That's my experiences, whether CRO or not. I think, but the big pharma has a lot to do with it, from my experiences. All right, that was my attempt at a hot seat. I ran out. Unless you guys have more.
I mean, that was pretty good. I'm sure we could keep going forever, but
More specialized independent conferences needed. Dang, Ashley. Yes. 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 And you'll know about it. Chess Made Easy. Wow. I'm currently an engineer, but I'm considering pivoting into clinical research. Just want to say thanks. Hey, thank you, Chess Made Easy. Amazing. Like maybe we can make like a fun game for coordinators, like on their breaks or something. Random gift cards to coordinators for no reason. Does it work, Robert? Or no?
There's a little fine line there. I don't know if we want to say like if it's that that black and white. I mean, I think the gesture is well received by a coordinator. Again, I think they're I think they're the most critical piece of the puzzle amongst any stakeholder in this whole operation. Without good data, you have nothing. All the bells and whistles in between mean absolutely nothing if the data isn't clean and
Mhm.
Alcoa standard. So for me, I don't know if it works, but I'm would assume they appreciate, you know, a gesture if I can throw them a $50 Starbucks card or an
Oh,
Amazon card.
50. I've seen $10 change a coordinator's day, like the whole
Well,
day.
so there you go. So I all about it, doing whatever we can. I mean, I've gone as far as where, you know, I've had you know, some I've had, you know, people tell me, "Hey Robert, can we pay the CRC extra, give them a bonus?" I'm like, "Well, you have to go through the site owner. I can't tell you, Dan, how
Yeah.
much to pay, or hey Brad, listen, I'm going to pay your CRC an extra $500 to spend an extra 20 hours a week screening for my study." You're going to be like, "Really?
I
Are you
think
really?"
there's a way to gamify maybe like answering queries. Like, hey, if you answer queries quickly, you get like $1 each time, and then you get a gift card to Starbucks at the end of the month or something. There's got to be ways to do it where it's
Yeah.
not like so much money to where the site owner gets mad, but also that the coordinator's like invested.
No, I mean, I think that, and this is maybe a whole nother conversation, but yeah,
Mm.
I think site owners have to be open for that, open to those kinds of things. And sometimes it's not cash, man. Just give them some props, like put them in a newsletter, whatever, shout them out. I think that
Yeah.
alone can go a long ways.
Yeah, I think so too. Rule of thumb: do not give a gift to just one person, always the group. Okay, thank you guys. I know we got a hard stop, so I got to
Yeah.
respect that. But I appreciate both of you guys coming on and everybody for riding with us today. Many more live streams to come with
Have a
Robert,
great
with Brad, of course, and everyone else out there.
rest of your day, guys.
Thank you guys.
All right.